Qui-Gon Jinn was a legendary Jedi Master, and who was popular for his willingness to listen to the will of the living Force first and foremost, disregarding both galactic law and the Jedi Code to do so. While Qui-Gon was never exactly a rebel in the most egregious sense, he was at odds frequently with the Jedi High Council due to his disagreements on the views of the Force, or most often, his own conduct during missions. However, his understanding of the Force, and simply learning more and being more receptive to the Force than the Council ever was, they saw his flaws. So all in, instability aside, Qui-Gon Jinn was still a Jedi Master that was trusted within the Order, even in the Council chambers. And yet, there are many theories going around that Qui-Gon is really a Grey at heart. While the truth of this can be debated, we do know of a moment in canon where Qui-Gon Jinn would actually seek wisdom from the dark side of the Force. And here, we learn Qui-Gon Jinn's relationship with the dark side and what he learns from it. Before this point, Qui-Gon Jinn had always drawn a strict line in the sand when it came to the dark side, as even though he acknowledged it as an aspect of the Force, he understood its seductive charms and destructive ways. But what happened when he went on a quest for answers, and found those answers by opening himself up to the dark side? Well, join us today as we go into the pages of the canon comic Age of the Republic Qui-Gon Jinn, and discover how these events transpired and Qui-Gon's view of the Force was changed forever. Our story begins with Qui-Gon on an average Jedi mission, one involving rescuing a priestess of the forest from her home planet, doing so during a hostile takeover. She was a priestess of wood, and an individual who worshipped and loved the trees, trying to protect her forest from the Metal Clan, a clan who wanted to cut them all down. During the mission, the priestess had expected Qui-Gon to cut down all of their enemies and was shocked when he instead grabbed her and retreated back to Coruscant in his ship, fleeing, as the priestess had heard of the legendary warrior prowess of a Jedi and was shocked that Qui-Gon Jinn did not kill all of his enemies instantly. The priestess would proceed to berate Qui-Gon, telling him that she had always heard the Jedi as great warriors, and she even called the Jedi Master a coward for not slaying the Metal Clan on her behalf. To which Qui-Gon was oddly silent. Back on Coruscant, Qui-Gon was thinking on one of the Jedi Temple balconies, deeply distressed by what the priestess had said to him. Yoda comes out to talk to Qui-Gon, and lets him know that he isn't a coward for not following through with manslaughter. However, Qui-Gon mentions that it wasn't the coward part that got to him, but being called a great warrior. Qui-Gon says that he's troubled that this is how the galaxy perceives the Jedi, and yet, they barely do anything to change this view. They're starting to look like soldiers, rather than trusted judicaries and peacekeepers. As an aside, I absolutely love this moment for Qui-Gon, even though Yoda tries to soothe over Qui-Gon's fears. This conversation also has a massive impact on Grandmaster Yoda. As in Empire Strikes Back, when Luke is looking for Yoda and calls him a great warrior, Yoda responds by laughing and saying that wars do not make one great, with us learning that this is a direct callback to this moment with Qui-Gon Jinn, and continues to show how much of an impact Qui-Gon had on an older Yoda. But back to Qui-Gon. The Jedi Master decides he needs to commune with the Force in order to search out the proper resolution, seeking an end to the priestess's problem without falling into the warrior ways that he so fears. He needs to ask the Force how he should act. In the Jedi Master's opinion, a big metal city was not the place for such a communion, so he decides that he needs to go where the Force guides him in order to meditate. Hopping into a starship, Qui-Gon actually closes his eyes and begins typing on the nav computer, literally letting the Force guide his fingers as he typed in random coordinates. All the while, he hopes in the back of his mind that by doing this, he hopes that the Force will not deposit him right into the heart of a star, trusting it completely. Qui-Gon displays his true trust in the living Force, literally putting his life in the hands of it by typing blindly into his computer. For those who may not know, or may need a reminder, hyperspace coordinates and calculations have to be made with extreme precision. This is why droids are often used, because one wrong calculation and you could end up, as Qui-Gon said, right inside of a star, or smashing into a black hole. And yet, Qui-Gon is closing his eyes as he types into the computer, allowing the Force to take him exactly where he needs to be. Exiting from hyperspace, the Jedi Master finds himself at a planet which is not listed in any modern star maps, and a planet that doesn't even have a name. His computer shows no technology readings, but a lot of life forms. Landing on the planet, Qui-Gon finds himself in a beautiful place covered in green grass and strange-looking plants. The Force is strong here, yet Qui-Gon suddenly feels a twinge of darkness and corruption coming from a certain point in the world. He finds the darkness and sees it manifesting in odd red grass and black prickly vines. This dark biome is spreading across this beautiful lush planet like an infection. As Qui-Gon observes this, he notes how it was spreading, but then asks himself if he was there to stop it or to learn from it. He then journeys farther into the heart of the corruptive biome and finds himself in a place dotted with several towers of twisted black vines, a place very strong with the dark side, a dark side nexus perhaps. As Qui-Gon looks upon one tower made up of the odd plant substances, it actually hollowed out to him, and inside are stairs leading up to a chair carved out of the corruptive flora. The entire tower has been fashioned into a dark monument, and yet, without hesitation, Qui-Gon climbs the stairs and rests right in front of the chair to meditate, all while stating, "I seek answers from the living force, perhaps even the dark in this moment. I am meant to find the light." As Qui-Gon enters deep meditation, he is transported into a different world in his vision, as he sees red spiked vines crawling towards him rapidly. When they reach him, they all twist and form into a humanoid being made up of the corrupted plants. Qui-Gon immediately activates his lightsaber as all of the beings begin to come for him, as he swings his way through them, cutting down the plant people with prejudice and rage. As they all lie on the ground, he watches as the red plants recede, doing so to reveal the bodies of normal-looking people lying dead on the ground. Qui-Gon looks at them in horror, seeing what his own hands have done, as the red vines have crawled onto him now and begin to spread over his body like a deep infection. Qui-Gon struggles, but the corrupted nature of the vines begins to encase him completely and consume his being. Finally, he woke from the vision, screaming out in terror, only to realize that he is in the same chair from before. And yet, looking around him, the Jedi Master is granted an insight through the Force. He is shocked as he sees that the light has found its way in, as the black and red plants inside the monument were turning blue and green, just like the rest of the planet, becoming more and more beautiful and peaceful. As the Jedi Master steps down and ponders his vision, he sees that one of the corrupted red plants has sprouted a beautiful flower, and Qui-Gon comes to this conclusion: balance. But through a means beyond conflict, violence sows the seeds of the dark side. Unchecked, the Jedi would become what we fight against. In the end, Qui-Gon heads back to Coruscant to give the priestess the wisdom that he had found in his journey, encouraging her to find balance and compromise by recruiting allies outside of her home. It was then revealed that the Metal Clan had done the same, and compromising with off-worlders did not have to mean corrupting their way of life. The story ends with another conversation with Yoda, as Qui-Gon is bringing up the problem of being so rigid in the Jedi Code and the Jedi Order. Qui-Gon even tells Yoda that he has become too rigid and that it is a risk. The tree that won't bend will snap in the wind. Yoda counters this by saying that the dark side is ever present and is always a threat, and that the Jedi must never bend to it. Qui-Gon agrees, saying that the dark side consumes and that there is no balance in such a path. And in this moment, Qui-Gon Jinn decides not to share with Yoda what he has learned about the dark side and the balance. But it does lead into how Qui-Gon Jinn is the first to become one with the Force. The foundation of Qui-Gon being able to completely give himself over to the Force rather than trying to willfully control his destiny, allowing him to become a part of it as a Force spirit. While Qui-Gon didn't actually use the dark side here, he still allowed himself to be seeped into it, realizing that even in the darkness, it still carried wisdom in the light. This is the true ways of wielding the Force in balance, understanding the cooperative nature between the dark and the light, and understanding the truth of the balance. And in the old way of thinking, like a gray Jedi. To make it clear though, Qui-Gon Jinn still heavily rejected the dark side in almost every form but balance. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on Qui-Gon Jinn's vision and revelation about the dark side itself? As always, my friends, thank you so much for visiting the channel today, and may the Force be with you.